Today on Inside Utah Politics, Proposition 2, Utah voters putting their stamp of approval on medical cannabis. We're checking in with advocates who have been on the front lines of the battle from the beginning. And it was an historic midterm election all across the country and right here in the state of Utah. Our panel will be breaking down the impact of the big races and issues.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us for Inside Utah Politics. I'm Glenn Mills. We begin this morning with Christine Stenquist and Desiree and Estevan Hennessy. Great to have all of you on the show. It's been a while, but I've been waiting to check back in with you, so thanks so much for being here with us. Really appreciate it. Let's start off with, this has been a long journey. Desiree, I think the last time I had you on the show, I mean, we're talking a couple years ago at least. So how are you guys feeling following the vote on Tuesday that Utah voters said, yes, we stand behind medical cannabis?
I think we're all really excited. I think that it says something. I mean, we put a lot of hard work into this. A lot of education was put into this, where we had to start from the ground floor. We had a legislative body and a state of Utah that did not have a lot of knowledge on medical cannabis, and we started there and educated to the point and united everybody to where now we're able to pass a law saying that we can medicate our family members with cannabis.
Christine, a lot of people look at the state of Utah and say, what? Medical cannabis being approved in the state of Utah? That's a pretty big deal.
It is. It's an amazing accomplishment, and I think all Utahns should be proud of themselves with the antics that happened during this campaign. It was a very hard fight just to get it on the initiative and just to keep it on there and get us to voting on the ballot. Yeah, I think everybody across the country should be pretty proud of Utah.
Were there times that you looked at that process, not only working with the legislature, but trying to get the initiative on the ballot? It was very contentious process. Were there times you looked at that and thought, oh boy, I don't know if this is going to happen?
About every other day.
Yeah.
So
we had
often.
crying sessions. Can you believe this?
How did you push forward and continue to the point that you needed to get to?
Well, for me, I got phone calls from my friend who says I was up with Estevan again all night with him crying because he was in pain. For Commissioner Summers, who fights for his son in Box Elder County, after listening to his wife at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning crying to me about how hard Talon is struggling. Forrest Shaw, who's dying of prostate cancer. Those are the voices that I cling to, and that's why I wake up at the morning crack of dawn and get working on this issue.
A very emotional issue. I think the people of the state of Utah saw that and had compassion for that. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I was just saying, you know, for me, I've said from the beginning, you know, we were fighting money and power with patients that were fighting for their lives. And that was a battle that was, so many times we thought, there's no way we're going to do this. We had no money, we had sick allies, and but at the end of the day, I think, you know, I started this fight for one reason. I started this fight because I was out of options and I was tired of watching him be in pain. But as we met other people that were coming out of the woodworks and saying that this was them too, this was their life too, every time I was like, I'm done. I can go home and I can just illegally medicate and I can be done. All those faces are burned into my mind. You know, we have so many people that need this that even though we didn't feel like we had the strength to move forward, we had to.
Tell us more about your son, the condition that he struggles with, and the hope that you have that medical cannabis can help alleviate some of that.
So Estevan is a chronic pain patient. He has a lot of things. He has seizures, you know, but where we started was a couple years ago he got a back surgery, and although it fixed he always had chronic pain, and the back surgery did help the pain in his back, but he resulted in sciatic nerve pain after the surgery, and it was so bad that he would scream for weeks on end with no relief. No pain med touched it, no nerve blocker. And we would check into the hospital just to sedate his body so it could have a rest from the pain, and we were told that that was kind of our future until he just died, because there's no way you can live in that much pain forever. And he was dropping weight. And then we were able to find some relief through some massage therapy and some other ways like that, but it's not consistent. It's very sporadic. And so cannabis for us is a medication that we now know helps, and we're able to give him that now and find relief and be able to drive in the car for more than 20 minutes without him screaming the rest of the drive.
Christine, you mentioned a lot of other people, but this is also personal for you and something you've dealt with in your life.
Yes.
Talk about that.
I'm a brain tumor patient. I have 60% of an inoperable tumor still left from a botched surgery 16 years ago. I suffer from trigeminal neuralgia, which is a pain condition. Affects half of my face. I have a shockwave pains that feels like ice picks, like an ice cream headache that never goes away. It's also dubbed the suicide disease. Patients really hit the ceiling with their opioids and they can't find relief. And that was sort of the scenario for me. So having access legally to cannabis that I've been using illegally for the past 6 years will be an amazing thing.
Let's talk about the compromise bill, because even though you've won a victory at the ballot box, there's still a special session coming up in which Prop 2 will be adjusted. You guys weren't standing behind that compromise bill. Talk to me about why.
Our biggest concern, I think, for me, and for at least Truce, is we saw it as political theater. For it to come out and talks of a replacement bill 4 days before the ballots went out seemed a little too politics 101 for me. It seemed very typical behavior of a campaign. And so I was concerned about that being what was going on. Now, just from the patient perspective, we were never completely satisfied with Prop 2. It had flaws, and we knew that from the beginning. We pushed and asked Connor for more allowance in that bill, and he said there's no way we'll get it on the ballot if we do anything more than what we're talking about here. And so that was a concern for us too, but we knew that a step forward was a step forward. And so now we've got the vote. We've got the people's vote. We're willing and wanting to talk about improvements to the bill, but so far what we see are things that are problematic. In areas where there's low-hanging fruits and things that are easily fixed, we're seeing big problems put into place.
And one of the things you don't like is the distribution, the specialized pharmacies. Why is that?
Well, we're still dealing with an illegal substance, so I'm still concerned about that this may sound like a great idea, but may just be a message bill in disguise. Putting something that sounds so grandiose that it hasn't been accomplished in any other state and saying we'll be the first ones that do it. We're going to be the first ones that are running drug money through our state and expect the federal government not to do anything when we're dealing with a Schedule I substance. It's concerning.
But even in other states where they're not doing it this way, the federal government theoretically could still step in and take action.
They could. They could. In other states, they've been dealing with a cash system. Now we're talking about running credit cards. We're talking about money. And I think when you talk about money and the federal government, you're going to have a different scenario play out.
Okay, so we'll watch how this plays out over the coming weeks. What's your strategy going into the special session?
Mobilize. It's going to be mobilizing the public. They're all paying attention. They're all very concerned about if their voice is going to be honored. Truce is definitely going to be teaching people how to get involved in the lobbying efforts on the Hill. And you're going to see a lot of people up in the gallery and probably in the halls wanting to talk to their legislators and wanting their voices to be honored.
All right, something we will continue to follow. Thanks for joining us today for the update. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, is the Prop 2 result a referendum on religion in politics? Our panel will debate that a little bit later. But first, when the new Congress convenes in January, it will have an historic new look. Our Washington correspondent will explain right after the break.